Have you ever wondered why someone who disappeared from your life still cannot seem to escape you? What if I told you that every night, when the world becomes silent, your image may return to someone's mind, not because they chose it, but because something deep within them refuses to let you go? And here's the shocking part. It may have almost nothing to do with you. Stay until the end, because the real reason will completely change how you understand relationships, memories, and even yourself. Before we continue, I want you to answer one question. Have you ever felt that someone was thinking about you for no logical reason? Write yes in the comments if you've experienced this, or no if you believe it's impossible. Sometimes our first answer reveals more than we realize. Imagine for a moment that every meaningful encounter leaves behind something invisible. Not a memory in the ordinary sense, but a living psychological imprint that continues to exist beneath conscious awareness. Most people believe that when someone leaves their life, the connection ends with distance, silence, or time. Yet the human psyche does not operate according to calendars or physical separation. It measures relationships differently. It remembers not only what happened, but what was felt. This is why someone may continue thinking about you long after every conversation has ended and every visible bridge has disappeared. The conscious mind is practical. It tells us when a chapter is over and encourages us to move forward. But beneath that orderly surface lies a deeper realm where emotions are not dismissed so easily. There, every significant relationship becomes woven into the structure of one's inner world. The people who deeply affect us are no longer experienced merely as individuals. They become symbols of important moments, hidden desires, painful losses, or forgotten possibilities. Even after they vanish from everyday life, the emotional thread connecting them to our inner landscape may remain intact. This invisible bond does not always arise from love, longing, or regret. Sometimes it exists because another person awakened something that had been asleep for years. A conversation may have revealed hidden confidence. A relationship may have exposed an unrecognized fear. Even a painful farewell can uncover strengths that would otherwise have remained buried. When this happens, the image of that person becomes tied to an important transformation within the psyche. Every time the unconscious revisits that transformation, it naturally brings their image back into awareness. This is why thoughts of someone often return unexpectedly, especially during quiet moments when distractions fade. The mind is not necessarily trying to recover the relationship itself. Instead, it is returning to the emotional meaning attached to that person. The individual becomes a doorway to unfinished feelings, unanswered questions, or parts of the self that still seek recognition. What appears to be an obsession with another person is often a deeper conversation taking place within the hidden chambers of the mind, where emotional truths continue unfolding long after the outer story seems to have reached its conclusion. There is a curious habit of the human mind that most people overlook. It does not simply abandon experiences because time has passed. Instead, it quietly stores emotions that were never fully understood, allowing them to remain active beneath the surface of awareness. During the day, responsibilities, conversations, and constant distractions keep these hidden emotions in the background. Yet when the world becomes quieter, especially at night, the deeper layers of the mind begin their work. What seemed forgotten often returns with surprising clarity, not because the past is demanding attention, but because something within it remains incomplete. An unfinished emotion is unlike an ordinary memory. A memory can fade naturally, becoming little more than a distant story. An unfinished emotion, however, continues to carry energy. It seeks understanding, expression, or resolution. This is why a person may suddenly remember someone they have not seen for years. The face that appears in their thoughts is rarely random. It has become connected to an experience that the psyche has never fully processed. Many assume these recurring thoughts are signs of lingering romance or an inability to move on. Yet the truth is often far more complex. A person may not miss the relationship itself. They may be revisiting the unanswered questions it left behind. Perhaps they never expressed what they truly felt. Perhaps they walked away before understanding what the relationship had revealed about themselves. Perhaps they still carry guilt, disappointment, hope, or confusion that never found a proper conclusion. The unconscious mind continues returning to these emotional fragments, attempting to assemble a complete picture from pieces that were left scattered. This process is not logical. The unconscious does not organize experiences according to dates or deliberate decisions. It responds to emotional significance. A familiar song, a passing scent, or a quiet evening can suddenly awaken feelings that seemed buried for years because they remain linked to an unresolved inner experience. The person remembered becomes less important than the emotional doorway they represent. Their image serves as a symbol through which the hidden mind continues exploring questions that consciousness has long stopped asking, revealing that what appears to be remembrance is often the psyche's ongoing search for emotional completion, rather than a simple desire to return to the past. One of the most fascinating truths about the human mind is that it rarely sees other people exactly as they are. Instead, it unconsciously paints them with colors borrowed from its own hidden world. A person may believe they are thinking about someone else, when in reality, they are encountering forgotten parts of themselves reflected through that individual. This silent process shapes countless relationships, influences powerful emotions, and often explains why certain people remain unforgettable long after they have disappeared from everyday life. When someone enters our lives, they do more than occupy a place in our memories. They awaken qualities that already exist within us, but have not yet been fully recognized. One person may stir confidence that had been buried beneath years of self-doubt. Another may expose fears we never admitted to ourselves. Someone else may represent freedom, security, ambition, or vulnerability. Without realizing it, the mind begins connecting these inner qualities with the external person standing before it. Gradually, the individual becomes more than themselves. They become a living symbol of something hidden within our own psychological landscape. This is why emotional reactions are often far stronger than circumstances alone can explain. The intensity does not always come from the other person's actions. It comes from the meaning the unconscious has attached to them. A simple conversation can leave an unforgettable impression because it touched a forgotten part of the self. A brief relationship may linger for years because it awakened possibilities that had remained asleep for a lifetime. The person becomes the screen onto which the unconscious quietly projects its hopes, fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts. As time passes, many assume they cannot stop thinking about that individual because the connection was extraordinary. Yet the deeper reality is often different. Their image continues returning because it has become linked to an inner journey that remains unfinished. The mind is not always searching for the person themselves. It is searching for the qualities, emotions, or unanswered questions that person brought into awareness. Their face becomes a doorway through which the unconscious revisits its own hidden world, attempting to understand aspects of the self that were once ignored. What appears to be an attachment to another human being is often a profound encounter with one's own unexplored nature, reflected through someone who unknowingly became its mirror. There is a reason the night has always been associated with mystery, reflection, and powerful inner experiences. As daylight fades, the outer world gradually loses its hold on our attention. The endless demands of work, conversations, responsibilities, and distractions begin to fall silent. What remains is not merely darkness outside, but a growing awareness of the world within. In these quiet hours, the conscious mind, which spends the day organizing, judging, and controlling experience, begins to loosen its grip. This subtle shift creates space for deeper psychological processes that often remain hidden during waking activity. Throughout the day, people wear invisible masks shaped by expectation and routine. They focus on solving problems, making decisions, and responding to the needs of the external world. This constant mental activity acts like a bright light, illuminating only what appears immediately useful while casting deeper emotions into the shadows. Night changes that balance. Without the noise of daily life, thoughts that were ignored begin to rise naturally. Feelings that seemed distant suddenly become vivid, and memories that appeared forgotten return with surprising intensity. This is why many people find themselves thinking about the same person repeatedly before falling asleep. It is not necessarily because that individual has become more important after sunset. Rather, the silence of the night removes the distractions that prevented deeper emotions from reaching awareness. The unconscious does not become more active because of the darkness itself, but because fewer barriers remain between hidden feelings and conscious thought. The mind finally has room to revisit experiences that were postponed throughout the day. Dreams also become part of this process. As sleep approaches, the boundary between conscious awareness and the deeper layers of the psyche becomes less rigid. Images, emotions, and symbols begin to flow more freely, often blending past experiences with present concerns. A familiar face may appear not because the mind is reliving the past exactly as it happened, but because that person has become linked to emotions or questions that still seek understanding. Their image serves as a symbol through which the unconscious communicates with itself, using memory as the language of inner exploration. In this quiet landscape, the deepest movements of the psyche become easier to perceive, revealing connections that daylight often keeps concealed. If you're finding meaning in this journey so far, take a moment to subscribe and share this video with someone who enjoys exploring the hidden depths of the human mind. There are many mysteries we never question simply because no one taught us how to see them. Many people believe that dreams should be interpreted literally. If they dream about someone from their past, they assume it means they still love that person, that the other individual is thinking about them, or that fate is trying to reunite them. While these interpretations may feel emotionally satisfying, the deeper workings of the mind suggest something far more symbolic. Dreams are not simple recordings of reality. They are psychological expressions that transform emotions, conflicts, and hidden desires into images the conscious mind can experience. The people who appear in dreams often represent much more than themselves. The unconscious mind communicates differently from ordinary thought. During the day, we rely on words, logic, and direct explanations. In dreams, however, the mind speaks through symbols. A single person can represent an entire chapter of life, an unresolved emotion, or a forgotten part of one's personality. This is why the same individual may appear repeatedly even after years of separation. The dream is not necessarily about reconnecting with that person. It may be using their image to explore an inner conflict that remains unresolved. Consider how one person might symbolize safety because they offered comfort during a difficult period. Another may represent lost confidence because the relationship ended with rejection. Someone else may embody freedom, innocence, ambition, or even fear. The unconscious selects these familiar faces because they carry emotional meaning, allowing complex inner experiences to be expressed through recognizable images. The dream is less concerned with external events than with the emotional truths attached to them. This symbolic language often becomes stronger during periods of personal change. When someone faces uncertainty, loss, growth, or important decisions, old faces frequently return in dreams. Not because the past is demanding to be repeated, but because the psyche is searching its own history for symbols capable of expressing what words cannot. A former friend, partner, or family member becomes a messenger rather than the message itself. Understanding this changes the way dreams are viewed. Instead of asking, "Why did I dream about this person?" a more meaningful question becomes, "What does this person represent within my inner world?" The answer is rarely found in the individual who appears in the dream. It is found in the emotions, memories, and hidden aspects of the self that their presence quietly reveals, offering insight into psychological movements that continue unfolding beneath conscious awareness. One of the most common misunderstandings about human relationships is the belief that if someone constantly thinks about another person, they must secretly want to return to them. This assumption seems natural because the conscious mind prefers simple explanations. It equates repeated thoughts with lasting affection and imagines that memory always points toward reunion. Yet the deeper layers of the psyche follow a different path. They are not driven by the desire to recreate the past, but by the need to understand it. This is why a person can think about someone night after night without having any real wish to reconnect. Closure is not the same as reconciliation. Reconciliation concerns rebuilding a relationship, while closure concerns restoring inner balance. The mind seeks closure whenever an experience ends before its emotional meaning has been fully understood. Words left unsaid, questions left unanswered, apologies never offered, or feelings never expressed can continue existing beneath awareness long after the relationship itself has ended. The unconscious revisits these unfinished emotional moments, not because it hopes to reverse time, but because it continues searching for understanding. In many cases, the remembered person becomes a symbol of a lesson rather than a destination. They represent a chapter that shaped the individual in profound ways. Every time their image returns, the psyche is not necessarily asking, "How can I bring this person back?" It may instead be asking, "What was I meant to learn from this experience?" The relationship becomes an inner teacher whose influence continues even after physical separation has become permanent. This explains why someone can feel emotionally affected by a person they have no intention of contacting. They may have accepted that the relationship is over, yet still find themselves reflecting on conversations, decisions, or missed opportunities. The mind is attempting to reorganize those memories into a meaningful narrative, allowing emotional confusion to become psychological understanding. Until that process is complete, the person's image may continue appearing in quiet moments or dreams. True closure rarely arrives through another conversation or a final meeting. It often emerges from an inner realization. When the hidden lesson is finally recognized, the emotional charge surrounding the memory begins to dissolve naturally. The remembered person remains part of one's history, but no longer carries the weight of unresolved questions. Their presence within the mind gradually transforms from an open wound into a meaningful chapter, no longer pulling attention toward the past, but quietly becoming part of a deeper understanding of oneself. It is easy to believe that when someone cannot stop thinking about you, it is because of your personality, your appearance, or the moments you shared together. While these factors certainly shape relationships, they do not fully explain why one person can remain deeply present in another's mind for years. The deeper reason often lies in what your presence awakened within them. Without intending to, you may have become a mirror reflecting parts of their inner world that had remained hidden for a long time. In remembering you, they are often encountering themselves. Every meaningful relationship acts like a mirror in some way. We do not simply meet another person. We discover unfamiliar aspects of our own nature through the experience of knowing them. One individual may reveal our courage, another our vulnerability, another our fear of abandonment, and another our capacity for joy. These qualities already exist within us, yet they often remain unnoticed until another person brings them into the light. The relationship becomes the setting in which these hidden dimensions of the self first become visible. Over time, the mind begins linking those discoveries with the person who inspired them. If someone felt truly accepted for the first time while they were with you, your image may become connected with the experience of self-worth. If they confronted fears they had avoided for years, your presence may symbolize personal transformation. If they glimpsed a life they never believed was possible, you may come to represent hope itself. The unconscious stores these emotional meanings more deeply than ordinary facts, causing your image to return whenever those inner themes become active again. This explains why people sometimes think they miss a specific individual, when in reality, they are longing for the version of themselves that existed during that relationship. They remember how confident they felt, how alive they became, or how deeply they understood themselves in those moments. Your face becomes the symbol through which the mind reconnects with those forgotten qualities. It is not always your physical absence that creates longing, but the disappearance of the inner experience your presence once awakened. The remarkable truth is that mirrors are powerful precisely because they reveal what cannot easily be seen alone. A person may spend years believing they are searching for someone else, while the unconscious quietly guides them toward a forgotten part of their own identity. Every recurring memory becomes less about another individual and more about the hidden self waiting to be recognized through the reflection that relationship once provided. One of the greatest traps of the human mind is the belief that personal worth depends on how deeply someone else remembers us. Many people spend years wondering whether an old friend still thinks about them, whether a former partner regrets leaving, or whether their absence continues to echo in another person's life. These questions may seem harmless, yet they quietly place one's sense of value in the hands of another person's thoughts and emotions. The more attention is given to these uncertainties, the more personal peace becomes tied to answers that may never arrive. Real freedom begins when this pattern is recognized. The fact that someone thinks about you, dreams about you, or remembers you does not define your importance. Their thoughts belong to their own inner world, shaped by their memories, emotions, fears, and unresolved experiences. You may appear in their mind because you symbolize courage, loss, hope, regret, or transformation. None of these meanings can determine your true identity. They reveal far more about the landscape of their psyche than they do about your actual worth. Likewise, if someone rarely thinks about you, this does not diminish your value. The human mind remembers according to emotional significance, not objective importance. Some relationships leave deep psychological impressions because they coincide with periods of change or personal crisis. Others fade naturally because their emotional work has already been completed. Neither outcome serves as a measure of the people involved. They simply reflect different stages of inner development. When this understanding begins to take root, emotional dependence gradually loses its grip. Instead of asking whether another person still carries your memory, attention shifts toward understanding your own inner life. Questions become less focused on external validation and more concerned with personal growth. Why does a particular memory still affect you? What hidden lesson remains unfinished? Which qualities within yourself are asking to be acknowledged? These reflections lead inward rather than outward, creating a foundation that does not rely on another person's approval or remembrance. This shift transforms relationships in a profound way. Instead of seeking reassurance through someone else's attention, you begin recognizing that every meaningful connection has already contributed something valuable to your psychological journey. Memories become teachers rather than chains. The past becomes a source of insight rather than a place of emotional imprisonment. As self-awareness deepens, the need to control how others remember you slowly disappears, replaced by the quiet confidence that your deepest value exists independently of anyone else's thoughts, memories, or perceptions. So, if someone thinks about you every night, do not rush to believe it is proof of destiny, unfinished love, or a sign that they are meant to return. The human mind is far more mysterious than that. It remembers people not only because of who they were, but because of what they awakened. Sometimes you become the symbol of a forgotten dream. Sometimes the reminder of an unhealed wound. Sometimes the reflection of a self they have not yet fully understood. The deeper question has never been, who is thinking about me? The question is, What does my presence represent within their inner world? And what do the people I cannot forget represent within mine? Every lasting memory carries a hidden message. Every recurring thought points towards something seeking awareness. The people who continue appearing in the silent corners of the mind are often less important than the unseen parts of ourselves they quietly reveal. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not that someone remembers you when the world falls asleep. Perhaps the greatest mystery is that every meaningful relationship leaves behind an invisible doorway into the human soul, waiting for the moment we are finally willing to walk through it. And when that moment comes, you no longer seek answers in another person's memories. You begin discovering them within your own.